You're listening to The Spooky Darlings, where three sisters chat about something extra spooky today. Nettie, you were the chooser.
I was the chooser, and I'm Nettie. And you are?
Oh, and I'm Haley.
I'm Emily, and this is a 3D episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a 3D episode, which if you are just tuning in, it's where one of us picks a topic and sort of leads the episode, and we ask our co-hosts to also do a little bit of research on the topic. So today we are doing the Ouija board. And I'm a little spooked by this topic. I actually love Ouija boards, but they are a little scary to me at the same time. It's kind of like this weird kind of thing where I tend to not take them very seriously when I like play with them, but I usually have a good time, but I'm also have heard enough scary experiences that they're a little bit fearsome for me.
Spooky.
So I have a story I'm going to tell, but before that, I asked Emily to just give us a brief, I asked her to look up brief history on various ways that people communicated with the dead before Ouija boards. So she's going to just do that for us real quick. Thanks, Em.
Yeah, thanks. Long before Parker Brothers turned the Ouija board into a parlor game, humans were always desperate to reach across the veil. The Ouija board is just one of the most recent chapters in a very long, strange history of our obsession with contacting the dead. So let's start at the beginning. Before the Ouija board, there were ancient methods of spirit communication. Oracle bones from China around 1200 BC were one of the oldest documented forms of spirit consultation. This came from China's Shang Dynasty. Priests would carve questions into animal bones or turtle shells, then apply intense heat until the bone cracked. The pattern of the cracks was read as a divine response.
What?
Some of the evidence of these bones have survived for over 3,000 years, and thousands have been excavated, still bearing questions about harvests, battles, and royal decisions.
I wonder if they still do that today. I wonder if there's people that practice that.
Oh, there has to be.
That's
wonder. Cool. Yeah, I bet. I mean, yeah, who knows? But there were questions that, just were so, identifiable, you can identify with them, right? So will the hunt be successful? Will the king recover from his illness? Will it rain?
Mm-hmm.
So, moving on to another
Does Chance
region.
have a crush on me?
Yeah, it does. Will he love me? Will he not? So there was also in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, there was necromancy. So the ancient Greeks had a formal practice called necromancy, which was literally divination by the dead. I always thought necromancy meant magic that involved raising people from the dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there were these certain sites called necromantions, or oracles of the dead, and they were believed to be portals to the underworld. Visitors would perform these elaborate rituals, including fasting, drinking special potions, and animal sacrifice, and then they would supposedly descend into underground chambers to receive messages from their deceased loved ones or prophetic spirits. Wow. Homer's Odyssey also featured one of these situations, literature's most famous necromantic scenes, where, Odysseus? How do you say it?
Odysseus? Odysseus, I think.
Yep.
Odysseus?
That guy digging a pit, filling it with blood, and summoning the shade of Prophet Tiresias. This was not fringe magic, it was religious practice.
And it's interesting because that actually reminds me of the story that we just did about the guy that did the automatic writing and talking about the afterlife.
Wait, the woman.
Well, the woman that did the automatic writing. Yes, the woman that did the automatic writing, but the guy that she was channeling.
Yeah.
And his descriptions of the afterlife. And this also reminds me of that time I did a shamanic journey when I was at Brighton Bush, and how they had us start it was they said basically to imagine yourself, to get into a meditative state and visualize descending into an underground chamber. So we weren't physically going into one, but mentally that was
So they wanted you to visualize?
Mm-hmm. Visualize going into an underground chamber, and then in the underground chamber, you looked for passages to get into, like, your place where you would meet your spirit guides and your spirit animal.
Wow.
And you did meet your spirit animal.
I did, and my spirit guide.
Okay, so there's also the practice of tasseography and scrying, and this was more widespread. So scrying is gazing into a reflective or translucent surface to receive visions, and this is kind of like cross-cultural, across time and cultures. So there were methods that included catoptromancy, which is like mirror scrying. Like that's like the origin of Bloody Mary. That's one example of this. There's also hydromancy, which is gazing into still water or a bowl of liquid.
Yeah.
Crystal gazing, which is, like kind of like a crystal ball, like similar to that or like the precursor to that. And then lecanomancy, which is reading patterns in oil poured on water.
Oh, so wow. I don't think I've heard of that one.
I hadn't either, but it does kind of sound almost like reading tea leaves, doesn't it? Like it's, I don't know, just like little, similar. So these were used by ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, and then later by medieval European mystics. So the common thread is like some sort of reflective surface that can kind of act as a window between worlds. There's also pendulum divination, which I love.
Me too. Comes from all practicers of this for fun.
Yes. Yeah, we've all tried it. So this comes from the Roman era. Roman historians, including Ammianus Marcellinus in the 4th century, described a divination device that was very similar to what we now call the Ouija board. It was like a ring suspended on a thread that was held over a circular table that had different letters of the alphabet etched on it, and the ring would swing towards letters to spell out answers.
Yeah.
So this was a table-turning device in some accounts, a phrase. So, just basically it was like a way to kind of cipher out different messages. Romans actually executed people for practicing this. So it was kind of like one of the, like an early instance of people being persecuted for this type of practice. So in 12th century China, just like Nettie was saying, the practice of automatic writing started to rise. Fuji or planchette writing is what it was called. So a basket or sieve would be suspended over sand or paper, and there would be sticks attached that would move to write characters. And, they would kind of like cipher out messages from that. And then also, we've all heard about the Spiritualist movement in 19th century America. And this is where kind of like, mid to late 1800s, the Fox sisters kind of like...
They just came in convincing everyone.
Yeah, surprised
and maybe
everybody
they were.
with their demonstrations of being able to communicate with the dead, which, turned out to eventually be, I don't know, they kind of like recanted.
The legitimacy was called into question, but never completely.
They would kind of like say that that it was a hoax, and they kind of recanted their claim that it was a hoax. So that one's a confusing one. But then that brings us to 1850s France, where the planchette came into play. And that was around 1853. There was this small heart-shaped triangular tool that was mounted on casters or wheels. And like a planchette means little plank. So it would be fitted with a pencil, and then you could like produce automatic writing, or you could just use it to point at things. And that was kind of like the precursor to the Ouija board. And that's all I have.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. So now I'm going to tell you about the development of the Ouija board. So Emily gave us all of the stuff that kind of led up to it. So we sort of know that people were doing things that mimic what our modern day Ouija boards do. And it all started in 1890 with a patent. It was developed in Baltimore, Maryland in 1890, and there was a group of businessmen, actually. So it's kind of, I don't know, I think when people hear like what a business venture this was, it takes a little bit of the magic out of it. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. But there was a group of businessmen. Charles Kennard and Elijah Bond were the two main guys, and they wanted to commercialize this talking board concept because people had begun to use the planchette that Emily talked about on a board with letters of the alphabet. Instead of just using the planchette to automatic write, they made a board with letters of the alphabet with yes or no and with numbers, and were using it to communicate. So they thought, you know what, this is a good money-making opportunity. We're going to commercialize this talking board idea that has been circulating in these ever-growing in popularity spiritualist groups and spiritualist circles. So on May 28th, 1890, they filed a patent for a Ouija, or Egyptian luck board. And there's varying stories about how the board got its name, and it's a little bit still shrouded in mystery. We're not completely sure. So Bond's sister-in-law, Helen Peters, who was a medium, she asked the board what it wanted to be called, and it spelled out Ouija. And when they asked what it meant, it said good luck. So we don't know whether that's true or not. A lot of people think that it's a combination of the term oui for French and ja, which is German, like ja, I think is actually German for yes, but like with a French J. So Ouija. It's Ouija, so you would think like phonetically it's a Ouija board, which a lot of people pronounce it that way, but kind of just when people are talking about it quickly, a lot of people say Ouija, but it is not how it is spelled. Mm-hmm. And I usually say like Ouija board, but if I'm talking quickly, I might say Ouija. Anyway, the patent changed hands, and a young employee named William Fold took control of the board's production and branding, and he was a genius at promotion. He also claimed to have invented the board himself, which he did not, but when he took control of the production and the patent, he just decided to claim that. But he expanded production like dramatically. And by the earliest 20th century, the Baltimore factory in Maryland was running at full capacity. And he died in the factory in 1927. And a lot of people attribute the fall to the board directing him to build a new factory flagpole. So he was up somehow on the roof. I've heard on the roof, and I've also heard that he just died from a high level in the factory. I've heard both things, but we know that he did die in the factory from a fall.
Wow.
So, but it's just like, even if it was just an accident, it is creepy that he died, that the owner and the guy in charge of all this died in the factory.
Mm-hmm. Like he was probably cursed.
And yeah, probably cursed. Now, it wasn't really marketed as a toy or as something for children for the next, 27 to 66, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 40 years. Yeah. It was kind of still marketed for spiritualist circles and for like more adults.
Yeah. No one realized that children want to talk to the dead.
Oh, man, more than anyone, the children. But in 1966, the Parker brothers purchased the rights to the Ouija board from the Fold family estate. And they decided to completely rebrand it. And it was no longer marketed as a spiritualist tool or a paranormal device, but as a game. So you would find it in the game aisle, right next to Monopoly, right next to Candyland, next to Clue.
I think you can still find it in the in the game aisle.
I think so too. And in the first year that Parker Brothers was selling the Ouija board, it outsold Monopoly, which up to that point had been the highest selling children's game or family game.
And Monopoly was actually created by a woman.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah, the men who created Monopoly stole her idea.
Oh, well, that sounds a lot like the tarot decks, the Smith-Waite.
Yeah.
Tarot deck. Yeah, there's two different names. There's the Smith. They're the same deck. It's the Smith-Waite or the something other weight, and one of them is her name was put back in. I can't remember. Anyway, we can talk about that in a tarot episode. I think we may have talked about it actually already. Okay, so outsold Monopoly. Everyone was kind of like back into mysticism. There had sort of been the spiritualist movement where mysticism was really popular, and then the country had kind of gone more towards like mainstream Christianity. And then here there was sort of like an exploring of mysticism was sort of welcome again.
Don't they kind of coincide with wars?
Yeah, I think they do.
And
I
people
think they do.
Probably wanting to connect with their lost loved ones.
Yeah, I think so. And I also just think maybe sort of a rise in fascination with the occult and Eastern religions, like Buddhism or, like other Eastern religions that sort of highlight communication with the dead.
Yeah.
And Christianity does highlight communication with the dead, and so does Judaism. Both of those, both of those like very big religions. Even Catholicism highlights communication with the dead. So it's not unique to like Christianity or to
I think it's just like how you go about talking with the dead. Like in Christianity, you like pray to your loved ones. And then with the Ouija board, you're supposed to be communicating with someone on the other side.
Or in Christianity, like depending on which branch you're in, you'd pray to God for your loved ones or about your loved ones. Like, tell Grandpa I love him, kind of thing.
Right.
But, okay, so it was like a big thing at slumber parties. I remember doing it at slumber parties when I was a kid. It was like, in dorm rooms and living rooms. And then in 1973, The Exorcist was released. And it portrayed, as we know, the possession of the demonic possession of a young girl that began with her using the Ouija board. So that...
Really? I must be forgetting that part.
That kind of caused everyone to sort of freak out. So churches started sort of like, the churches hadn't really like officially come out against it until then, but churches started rallying against it. Parents threw the boards away. And what's weird is this did not cause a dip in sales. Sales actually spiked because nothing sells like telling kids something is forbidden. Like you tell people they can't have something but still make it available, they're going to find a way to get it.
Oh, yeah.
But the Exorcist movie did cement the board's reputation for it being a dangerous thing that would lead to...
well, because before that, it was very neutral.
It was like communicate with grandpa or with grandma or, who can you talk to? Oh, I'm talking to the old man that used to live in this house, whatever it was. But then it became like you might be communicating with a sinister, malevolent entity. You might be communicating with a demon.
Which kind of helps my thoughts on the Ouija board, which is it gives back what you put into it.
Yes. Well, I think that's practice of magic in general. If you kind of like put like a Ouija board under the umbrella of magical practices, it is like if you talk to people that are into magic, they'll say you can do a curse on someone, but just know that anything that you do to someone else, you're opening that to be done back to you.
Yes.
So instead of a curse, do a protection. Like don't curse someone, just protect yourself against them.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a good way to think of it, Haley.
Thank you.
I like that. And I think that's probably actually where my sort of unease comes from, although I will do it, have done it, and will do it
Probably
again.
do it again.
Yes. So what we're going to talk about, like what scientists say is actually happening when the planchette moves. So it's just a physical description of the Ouija board, just so people know. I think everyone knows, but we have a wooden board. The classic board is a wooden board. I believe that the Parker Brothers version is cardboard. And it's got a glossy finished surface. And then the planchette usually has some sort of velvet or felt on the bottom side so that it can glide easily across. The users put their fingers on either side of the planchette.
Very lightly.
Very lightly. And the idea is you do not push it. You're touching it, but you're not putting weight on it. You just need to be in contact with it. And then if you are clear your mind, ask some questions, and there are any entities that want to communicate with you, they will communicate through the board. And that's kind of how it's used. But we're going to talk about what scientists say are happening. So there was a physician in 1852 named William Benjamin Carpenter, and he coined the term idiomotor effect. And it basically is unconscious muscular movements that occur in response to thoughts or expectations. So he's basically saying you're not even consciously moving it, but if you have a thought like, what is your name? And you might think, Fred. Like that thought will do an unconscious movement and start guiding that planchette towards the F. And that would also apply to pendulum work if you're doing the, circle right clockwise for yes, circle counterclockwise for no. It would apply to that too. Like you want a yes or no answer, and you're going to do an unconscious movement that encourages it to circle one way or the other.
Right.
And I mean, who knows? Maybe that's true. People say it's imperceptible and involuntary. That's what the scientists say. But I also know that I've experienced the planchette moving against what I would actually how it would move. Like I'm thinking that the answer would be yes, or that the letter would be this, and it's suddenly going the opposite way. And I'm going, wait, what's happening? Which kind of, to me, is the opposite of that experience. And It's just a demon calling. Just kidding.
Sorry, it was my husband.
That's what I said. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, so today, Parker Brothers no longer owns the Ouija board trademark. It is now owned by Hasbro, and it is still manufactured and sold as a toy, but paranormal investigators use it as a serious research tool. And it constantly appears in horror movies. It's a really good way for them to show communication with the dead in a horror movie. If you need to move the plot along, like, how are they going to get this message from the dead? Well, they either go to a medium and get their palm read, or they get a Ouija board out. So the board has really not changed much in 130 years. It has all the letters of the alphabet. It has a yes and a no, and it also says goodbye. So whether or not it's a window to the other world is kind of a question of who's using it and what their purposes are.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now, I was going to ask Haley to tell us how she practices Ouija board safely, because I know that anytime you've done it, you have had like a process that you use that's like protective and keeps it safe.
So just for myself, I have like my personal, some people call it a grimoire. I just have my like little practice rituals that I like to do. And I have written some of them down in a book for myself. And so before I do a Ouija board session, I do like to make sure that we're protected because, I mean, we've all seen the movies. Sometimes, like, it can seem scary. And so just to, like, keep any negative energy away.
Like, set your intentions.
Exactly.
Okay.
I like to just make sure that we are shielding ourselves from any negative energy. And I like to light some candles. It helps kind of make everything feel very like established. And then light the candles when we start the ceremony, keep them lit while we do the Ouija board. And then when we close out, we make sure that we like say goodbye on the Ouija board. We blow out the candles just to have kind of a finality on any energy that may have come through, that we are cutting ourselves free from it, so it can attach.
I think that the ritual is important. And I actually think that it can kind of get you in the headspace that if there is something to communicate with, gets you in the headspace to like let that in. If you just sit down and don't do any of that stuff and you just start playing, you're not in the right headspace for it. It's kind of like a meditation. You have to...
Oh, and the ringing of a bell.
Oh, yes.
To clear the space.
Do you do like crystals or anything around ever?
I have crystals. I think we used crystals when we were in McCall and the girls wanted to do Ouija board.
Okay, but also don't you have salt?
Yeah, do you do any salt?
I don't think I do salt.
No, well, salt's used in so many different things. I was actually had the same question, but I don't know.
If I were like outside, I would maybe do salt, but you have to clean it up.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering, because it's been quite a while since I've done a Ouija board session and I've pulled out
your whole kit
grimoire and like actually did the protection spell. But I just kind of have like I remember. We have everyone kind of imagine a ball of light around the group. And that is kind of our protection from any negative entities. And then we do we all say the like thing that I wrote down, which is just generally what I've already said, keeping negative entities away, but we welcome positive energy or entities or spirits.
Yeah.
And then...
I mean, it sounds kind of like what you do when you're smoke cleansing a room. Like you walk around and get the smoke in the corners and just kind of like keep repeating the mantra of like
very similar.
No negative entities are welcome here. Be banished and positive energy, positive things only.
In place of like a salt barrier, I do the ring of light. The bubble of light.
And I think I heard on the Two Girls One Ghost podcast that Sabrina. I think it was Sabrina. They both are like, we don't really play with Ouija boards, but they have a lot of people that write in. And I think Sabrina said that she does almost like imagines a strand of light, like a ball of yarn that's light. And then she imagines wrapping herself in it from the feet all the way up. And then as you wrap it, like each little thread expands. So by the time you're done, you're just completely coated in like a knitted sweater made of light. That's
a really interesting strategy.
A little cocoon of light.
Little cocoon's better than knitted sweater. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to tell you guys. Oh, did you have anything else about the safety or
no? And
practices?
I'm sorry I can't remember my ritual a little bit better.
No, that's okay. I put you on the spot for this, but I think probably the most important thing is close out that session.
Always say goodbye
and set your intentions.
Set your intentions, and a bell is great for clearing a space.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys a story that is reportedly true, but, questionable as to whether or not it's true. Now, in 2017, there was a horror film released called The Bye-Bye Man. Have either of you ever heard of it?
I've heard of it. I have not. I don't know anything about it.
I've not.
So I had never heard of it until I picked up this book at Powell's last time I was in Portland. And it was The Bye-Bye Man by Robert Damon Schneck. Now a terrifying motion picture. And it's The Bye-Bye Man and Other Strange But True Tales. It was previously published as a book called The President's Vampire, which is the story of think President Taft or something. And someone keeping like a vampire that I might tell this story later. But basically this vampire that it's someone who was accused of being a vampire that killed someone else on a ship, and then he was supposed to be executed, and the president stayed his execution and kept him from dying, and then there's just some spooky things that happened. So
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. This book is interesting because it's the Strange But True Tales, and it just takes you through a history of all of these crazy things that happened, like Devil's Militia, which was basically this thing that happened in the Revolutionary War, like pre-Revolutionary War. I wasn't actually intending on talking about all this, but pre-Revolutionary War, where this colony was basically attacked for the course of 3 months by unseen entities. They couldn't be shot. They would be shot. You could shoot at them, but they wouldn't.
One of us is covering this.
It was pretty interesting. But anyways, back to The Bye-Bye Man.
Okay.
So I saw this book and I was like, okay, I'm getting this. And then I took it as my reading material when Brent and I went to Mexico. And this is what I read on the beach to relax.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm going to tell you the plot of the movie. And then I'm going to tell you the story as it was portrayed in the book because they are different.
Okay.
So the movie begins with kind of like a prologue to the legend. It's in 1969, and this enraged man just basically goes on a neighborhood shooting spree where he goes up to people and says, "Have you spoken the name?" And I don't really know if they say yes or no, I don't, because I haven't actually seen the movie, but basically he shoots anyone who has spoken the name out loud. And then after he goes through his neighborhood and shoots a bunch of people, he then shoots himself. But before he shoots himself, he is muttering, "Don't think it, don't say it, don't think it, don't say it, don't think it, don't say it." So that's the beginning of the movie. Now, I want to say, this movie does not have good reviews. All of the things I watched on it. There was actually maybe 2 TikTokers I found that were like, "This is a really creepy movie, guys. It scared me." But almost everyone else was like, "This is one of the worst horror movies." And one of the criticisms was the name, The Bye-Bye Man, which I was surprised because I actually think
that's creepy.
The Bye-Bye Man sounds absolutely terrifying. The Bye-Bye Man, it's scary.
It's very scary. Emily, what's your opinion?
I think it sounds kind of scary, probably.
Okay, perfect. I love that.
I
love that answer.
Same page.
Probably scary, maybe? Probably. Okay, so then in the movie, it cuts to present day, and we have 3 college students. The names in the movie are different from the names in the book, and the names in the book are not the actual names of the individuals. Okay. So in the movie, it's Elliot, Sasha, and John. In the book, it's Eli, Catherine, and John.
So John stays the same.
John stays the same, and Elliot is Eli in the book.
Okay.
And the book is more true to the original story because the book was written by Robert Schneck, who heard it from one of the guys from Eli.
Okay.
From the Eli character. So present day, 3 college students. They are in this, they're all roommates. they rent a large house off of campus. They're in Wisconsin. And while they're cleaning out the house, Elliot discovers a nightstand with the phrase, "Don't say it, don't think it," scribbled repeatedly inside the drawer of the nightstand. Then he pries the drawer open and he uncovers the carved name, the Bye-Bye Man. He says it out loud and reads it out loud. And what he doesn't realize is that by doing so, he inadvertently summons the entity. What is the Bye-Bye Man? Well, in the movie, it's a supernatural entity that cannot be stopped once a person knows his name. He feeds on people having the knowledge of his existence. So if you know of him, if you say his name, if you think of him, it acts as like a psychic beacon. He will come and find you, and he then causes you to kill other people. So he just kind of takes control of you psychically and then causes the person to kill other people. So the curse takes hold of the 3 students. Sasha begins to hear strange noises. She gets sick, and she hallucinates that John and Elliot are both like betraying her in some way. And then John and Elliot both experience all of this crazy stuff. They imagine, Elliot imagines Sasha is cheating on him and with John. And John is also having dreams about infidelity and betrayal that drives a wedge in their friendship. And anyone who learns who they talk to the Bye-Bye Man about suddenly becomes compromised. They start also experiencing things. So they all realize something's going on, and they can trace it back to that particular event where they opened up the drawer and found the Bye-Bye Man's name carved in the desk, in the drawer. So Elliot is like, okay, I'm going to solve this. So he goes to the library and he seeks help from a librarian. But
always go to a librarian.
Well, it actually ended up causing a bunch of people to know about the Bye-Bye Man.
Oh, no.
So he goes, the librarian comes out and is like, I couldn't find anything on this, but I finally found a hidden file that was mislabeled. So it's kind of this weird thing where she's like, here it is, the Bye-Bye Man. That's strange. And so then a bunch of people are like starting now to kill other people, then kill themselves. So it's usually like, kill the roommate, kill yourself. Kill your mom, then kill yourself. It's happening and happening. And Elliot kind of realizes what's happening and that he's the one that kind of unlocked it. So he runs into John. He basically comes home, finds John attacking Sasha. He then shoots John to defend Sasha, but it was actually Sasha that he accidentally shot. And so then suddenly the Bye-Bye Man materializes in front of Elliot, and he's taunting him. And so Elliot decides to shoot himself, taking his own life. And then the house catches fire. And
oh my gosh,
there's an investigator that comes in, and they were not directly exposed to the name of the Bye-Bye Man. And they were there, for some reason, they were there at the same time the house caught fire. And then they leave. And as they're leaving, I believe John is alive. And he's taken to a hospital and whispers something to one of the paramedics. And so that's kind of like, I think that's what happens. And so you kind of leave thinking, oh, now it's going to cause more, because you assume that he's whispering the Bye-Bye Man's name to the paramedic.
And the paramedic had a Ouija board?
The Ouija board, I don't know if it actually makes an appearance in the movie. So that's the weird thing, because I felt like that was the most important component of the actual story I read.
Okay, so the movie
is based on the story, and they may have something where they use the Ouija board.
You know what this movie reminds me of, though?
What?
That movie with, it's like John...
Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt?
No, gosh, what's his name
like
from
Rizzono?
Roseanne?
Candy?
From Roseanne. John Goodman.
Yes.
With
Goodman, yeah.
Denzel Washington. And it's that like spirit that has a certain amount of time to enter a living thing. And the spirit is a serial killer. And Denzel Washington is a detective who figures it out. And
oh my gosh, what is this movie called? Because that almost sounds like it's loosely based on this.
Well, I mean, this came out in like the 90s or early 2000s. John Goodman and Denzel Washington serial killer movie. Google it.
Are you Googling it, Emily?
Yeah.
Who's Googling it?
Okay, Emily's Googling it. Okay, I was going to Google it,
I
but
thought
I'll
you were
keep
doing
telling
it.
the story.
Fallen.
Fallen?
Oh, The Fallen.
Not The Fallen, just Fallen.
Fallen.
It's so good. I don't know if it holds up. I hope it does, but it was so good when I watched it.
Only one way to find out.
Sister movie
time where we all watch it together
over
and
Brandy
we text each other.
weekend. Over Brandy weekend.
Maybe.
Well, I don't know if we'll be able to do it over Brandy weekend because we're going to be in a van.
We're going to be so busy.
But we can carve out a day.
Yes.
That we've not carved out for podcasting.
We'll all be
started
at our
at the same
houses.
time.
Started at the same time.
And
we
then just
all
text each other.
the sister chat.
Yeah. During the movie.
Does this sound perfect?
Emily will be like, I'm totally watching it. Was that a scary part? I think so. Are you guys loving this as much as me? And I'll be like, what are you talking about? Nothing scary has even happened yet. She'll be like, I know. I fast forwarded.
I know. I was just checking.
I just watch movies a lot faster than you do.
She's like, I was just resting my eyes.
Okay, so now I'm going to tell you the story it was based on. And here's where the Ouija board actually comes in. And
okay, good.
I bet that the Ouija board happens in the movie. I didn't read it. I've listened to some TikToks about that gave a recap. And then I found just a brief, the Wikipedia synopsis and kind of came, to it from here. Mm-hmm. But okay, so the film claims to be based on a true story. But the story of the Bye Bye Man probably falls under the umbrella of urban legend more than a true story. Ooh. But as you know, many films that claim to be based on a true story are really heavily fictionalized, heavily fictionalized. Mm-hmm. And Schneck himself, the author, Robert Damon Schneck, he claims himself that he heard this story secondhand at a party in the early 90s in New York City. And then he wrote it from memory in the book, The President's Vampire. As the chapter was actually called Body Island, but the entity that the story is about is called the Bye Bye Man. And eventually, after the release of the movie, the book was changed to the Bye Bye Man, which I already said. So the story takes place in Wisconsin, and it starts with 3 college kids who decide to play with a Ouija board one night. And this story is told by Eli, who claims he was one of the 3 college kids in Wisconsin. He claims that they came into contact with a serial killer who was living, who somehow was able to contact and find people through a Ouija board. So what's so interesting about this is the Ouija board is used as the way for a living person who somehow is able to lock into the astral plane or into this other realm and communicate with living people and find them and track them. So the other 2 characters are Catherine and John. And Eli and Catherine live together in this town in Wisconsin. And they're dating. And I think they're college students. And they got together one night with their friend John. And they start playing with a Ouija board that had been gifted to Eli by a childhood friend that said he found it in his attic. And it's
cool.
It does not say Ouija anywhere on the board. But it is your standard old spirit board. It was made of wood. It was not the Parker Brothers
That's
Ouija
my dream.
Board.
I mean, I have a lovely handmade Ouija board.
But you want to find an old one.
But I want to have an old one.
That was found in someone's witch's attic.
Oh, especially if they're a witch.
So it starts with just John and Eli. Catherine's hanging out in the kitchen, but she's just not very interested. John and Eli are just messing around with the board. And they do this for a couple nights, just hanging out, asking it questions. They're not getting anything. They're just kind of being playful with it. And then eventually they convince Catherine to join them. And suddenly, as soon as Catherine is participating, and it's the 3 of them, the board becomes very responsive. So they spend about the next week, just hours every night, come on, let's do the board again. And they realize that they're coming into contact with several different entities with different personalities. They said that the way the planchette even moved on the board differed depending on which entity they were talking to. And so John and Eli tried it again without Catherine. They got nothing. So Catherine was clearly the conduit or the link to this other dimension.
Feminine energy, man.
And pretty soon they found out that the board actually worked better when Eli wasn't involved. So John and Catherine were the ones mostly doing it. But Eli...
If I were Eli, that would hurt my feelings so much.
Me too. But Eli was like, this is great.
I'm okay with it. You guys do it a lot without me, and I really feel fine about it.
We have done it. We've only done it a couple times, which Haley's going to tell about later. But Eli just decides to use this opportunity to like take notes and like collect data on it. So he was like into scientific parapsychology. So he decided he would be the one to ask the questions. And they had tried while this was working, they were like, we should try EVP and we should try using pendulums, but they just didn't get the same response with the EVPs and the pendulums as they did with the Ouija board. And so he would ask the questions, and then John and Catherine would get the answers using the planchette. And then Eli decided to try just writing down the questions. He wouldn't even read them out loud to John and Catherine. He would write questions down, and the answers would still match up with what he was asking, even though John and Catherine would not know what the question was.
Oh my gosh.
So after a few weeks, they realized that they were basically visiting with the same 8 entities repeatedly. And these 8 entities actually said that they were not the ghosts of dead people, but that they were intelligences. They were like archetypes. The quote was archetypes from free-ranging consciousnesses. So they each had their own personalities, but they had never been human. And mostly they wanted to talk about like philosophy and New Age wisdom. And so they were really boring entities to talk with.
Sounds like it.
So John and Eli, especially, not Catherine, they wanted to talk to an actual dead person. They wanted to try to get information on a dead person and then like try to verify the information to see if they could find out something that no one else would know, like to actually prove that they were communicating with the dead. Mm-hmm. So they told this to the entities, and the entities cautioned them against it. They said that they should just keep talking. They were like, you should just keep talking to us. But
they're like, but you're boring.
But John and Eli were like pretty insistent that they really wanted to try to communicate with the dead. So the entities finally came around and they said, well, we found someone that wants to communicate with you, but this is not a positive entity. This is a sinister being, and it is also human, and it is still alive. This is not a dead person. So Eli and John were like, yes, this is what we want. This is exactly what we want. But Catherine was adamantly against it. She did not want to engage with a sinister being. She didn't really want to talk with the dead. And she had had some bad paranormal experiences in the past, like with dreams and seeing things, and she said she wouldn't do it. But after a few days, John and Eli pressured her enough and hassled her, and they didn't take no for an answer. It's called consent,
rude.
my dudes.
Yes.
And she eventually agreed to do it. And at first, when they tried to communicate with this other being, the board would not respond. And Eli was only asking questions about this non-dead, sinister, malevolent human. That was all he was doing. Mm-hmm. And the intelligences were still communicating. And they said that, yes, we've been communicating with him, and he has a name. And the name is the Bye-Bye Man. But as soon as that was spelled out on the board, Catherine had a panic attack. And she quit. And she's like, I won't do this. I will not do this again. But did they hassle her until she did it again? Yes, they hassled her for a few days until she agreed to do it again. But
Stop it.
But I know. This part makes me mad. But she agreed to do it as long as they didn't try to communicate directly with the being, but they went through the 8 intelligences. So they would ask the 8 intelligences to communicate with the being, who would then communicate with the intelligences, who would communicate with them. So they tried, but the intelligences were like, no, we don't want to. Mm-hmm. And they were like, well, we want to. And so John and Eli were like,
we want to.
We're like, we're going to go buy, this is what they told them. We're going to go buy a Parker Brothers version of the Ouija board and use that if you will not do what we ask. And these 8 intelligences were somehow attached to that particular board. So they did. Oh. They went and they bought they went to the store, they went to the toy aisle and bought a Parker Brothers board and used it for a few days, and they just got nothing. They even got Catherine to do it with them, and they got nothing. It did not respond at all. So after a few weeks of this, they pulled out the old board again and decided to use it. And the intelligences came through and said, okay, we'll do what you want. We'll try to communicate with this being. So basically they said, okay, tell us who this person is. Tell us who the Bye-Bye Man is. And they started to piece together a history. And the intelligences said that the Bye-Bye Man had started out as a little boy who was born with albinism. And that is where you have no pigmentation in your skin, hair, or eyes. Yeah. So most often, very white skin, white hair, red eyes. That is the most common way that albinism is presents in people. And the being or this human, the Bye Bye Man, didn't know anything about his parents. He just knew that he was in an orphanage in Algiers, which is a real place in that's near New Orleans. So it's like a small community near New Orleans. So it's near where like a lot of voodoo and hoodoo and like witchcraft is happening, and a lot of like communication with the dead. Like a lot of things are happening in Algiers. However, John, Catherine, and Eli said that they did not know where Algiers was. They'd never heard of it. They didn't even know if it was a real place.
Wow.
Because it's not like a place that's talked about. Like people talk about New Orleans, they don't really talk about this small community that's New Orleans adjacent. So this is what we know about albinism is genetic condition. You don't have pigment in your skin or eyes. Also, your eyesight is most often, I think actually in all cases, it's one of the trademarks of albinism. Your eyesight's pretty terrible.
Yeah. I went to, Emily, I don't know if you went to high school with
Girl. Yeah. Well, we probably don't say their names, but James was friends with the older brother.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say two people with albinism.
Yeah.
I'll edit that out. Yeah, we did. And really, like we got to interact with one of them a bit, and very, very nice. Very
super nice. Yep. They had glasses. They couldn't be outside very long.
The older brother was our brother's friend, and he actually helped Brent and I move to Corvallis when we were first married. And it happened to be like Corvallis is not a sunny place. It's like Western Oregon. It's almost like Forks, Washington. It's like cloudy, like vampires would live there. It's sunny. We happened to be moving on the sunniest day that they'd had, and the hottest day. It was 105 degrees that they had in like 20 years. And poor David was like helping us move, and he was just getting sunburnt. And finally, he's like, "I can't do it anymore." And I was like, "Oh, I feel so terrible that you did this at all. Like, go inside, like
have a glass of water."
Yes. Oh my gosh, because there's no pigment.
It's like allergic to the sun, basically
covered. Yeah, I felt so bad. He was like breaking out in like hives, and
I remember his little
so
sister. She like couldn't do gym class if it was outside.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, it's a tough thing. And I do remember our older brother, Dave. I always have admired him for this, but David and I think I was like a freshman in high school and David was a junior. And then the kid with albinism that was James's friend was like in middle school with James. And the kid was walking by himself from the middle school, and some high schooler was throwing rocks at him. And David, our brother, yelled at him, just was like, "What are you doing? Stop that!" Like probably some swear words were said because David was like not messing around, and the kid like stopped, and David was just like, "You're picking on someone just because they have like this condition? What's the matter with you?" And I just remember being like, "I'm so proud of my brother. I'm so proud of my brother right now. Like that was amazing." So Dave, if you ever listen to this episode, I was always proud of you for sticking up for that kid.
And we're still proud of you, older brother Dave.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And now I shall continue with this story. So this is what they gleaned from the intelligences about the Bye Bye Man. He was put in an orphanage. He did not know who his parents were. He was ostracized at the orphanage, but it wasn't just because of his appearance, although it probably
contributed.
It contributed because he wasn't allowed to go outside and play with the kids. He had to be inside all the time. So he didn't like mix well with the other orphans in the orphanage because he had no chance to like interact and play with them. But his behavior grew stranger and stranger as he got older. And one day he attacked a nurse with a pair of scissors and left her permanently injured. Like she basically became an invalid due to her injuries. So she survived it, but was permanently injured. Gosh. He ran away though after this from the orphanage, and he started to travel by train, but he would only come out at night. So he would find like boxcars to hole up in during the day and stay out of the sun, and he would come out at night and travel by train. And he just started murdering people, basically left and right. And he had, this point, had almost lost his eyesight. So he started harvesting eyes and tongues from his victims. Now remember, this is most likely urban legend, although there are some things that point to something like this possibly could have happened, but maybe not this next part. Yeah, man from the train, torso killer. There's another one. I talk about them in a minute. But he would harvest eyeballs and tongues, and he would sew them together. And he basically created an entity by sewing these pieces together that he called the Gloom Singer. And I thought this was so weird because he's from New Orleans, where the blues are like heavily, like New Orleans is like big, blues and jazz. So it was almost like blues singer, but gloom singer.
Yeah.
So he called it the gloom singer, and it would basically almost like, it was like a dog, but it would walk on the tongues, almost like a caterpillar, and then just was made of eyes and tongues.
That's really gross.
Yeah, it is really, really gross. And he did some sort of ritual to give this thing life and to give it power, but to keep it going, it had to constantly be, the tongues and eyes had to be replaced. So he kept like a bag of, it was called a sack of gore that was basically just eyes, tongues, and I think maybe ears of his victims.
Great. I'm so glad.
Well, the gloom singer was what he used to track victims because by this point he was basically blind. So the gloom singer would whistle a high-pitched whistle that only the bye-bye man could hear because due to his failing eyesight, he had really good hearing. Like that particular sense was enhanced on him. So he would go and find the gloom singer, and then he would find his victim, kill the victim, kill his, harvest the eyes and tongues. So rumors started to spread that there were these dead bodies turning up, and he was mostly killing people on the rails. So people aren't reporting necessarily missing loved ones because these were mostly transients anyway, which are just less likely to be noticed if they go missing.
Unfortunately.
So the rumors started to spread, and we're not really sure how, which is why this leans to urban legend, that he could telepathically sense if people were thinking his name or talking about him. And then that's how he found his people. So that's the story that John and Catherine and Eli got from the Ouija board. And so then they asked, like, well, where is he now, to the 8 intelligences? And they said he's in Chicago and that he's moving closer to you. And I think they were still in Wisconsin at this point. And so Catherine, when she heard this, she's totally freaked out. And Eli and John, she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. I will not participate in any more sessions. And Eli and John were really bummed because they felt like they were making progress and really close to figuring this out and to like having an experience that no one else had had with a Ouija board. And so they tried to do sessions on their own, but they just didn't work without Catherine. And
because women are powerful.
Yeah. And she just had the gift.
Yeah.
So John got a different job and started working nights, so it wasn't available in the evenings, and they kind of stopped hanging out. But they all were having like trouble sleeping, all 3 of them. Catherine was having regular panic attacks. So she was having panic attacks, which, then would keep Eli up because he would stay awake to care for her through that. But he also was having complete insomnia, just plagued by a sense of foreboding and a sense that something was wrong. And John said the same thing, just felt uneasy all the time. So at this point, Eli went to Wausau to visit his family. And Wausau is in Wisconsin, right on the river. And he took Catherine with him. So he, took his girlfriend home. And they decided to go for a walk downtown one evening. And all the stores were closed. So instead of going into stores, they decided to walk across a railroad trestle to an island that the locals call Body Island.
Oh,
the real
good.
The real official name, and this is true. I actually looked up. This part is true. The real name is Baker Stewart Island, but locally it's known as Body Island because it is where bodies from the Wisconsin River would wash up and where they'd find them. It was just like positioned so the bodies, if they died upriver, would come up shore. And historically, this had been a logging place, and it was back when they would just put the logs in the river and push them downriver. So loggers would die all the time because it's super dangerous. They're literally standing on these logs, floating on them down the river. And if you get caught between 2 logs and they bang together, you're dead.
Yeah.
Or if you get caught under a log jam and you can't get back up for air, you drown. So bodies of loggers were constantly being found. So that's why it was given the nickname Body Island. There was also like a story that I could not verify that a shop girl used that as a shortcut because it was like a bridge to the island and then the bridge continued on past the island, used that as a shortcut to get home, and that she left work one evening, went to walk home, never showed up at home, didn't show up for work the next day, so they sent out a search party, and they found her still alive at the tip of the island, staring out into the water, completely in shock, and she had been stabbed, and she was like taken to the hospital and died at the hospital. But I actually could not find an official record of that despite my searches. So there have been murders since, but like they've been more recently, like 2024, like 2016 or something. This was written in the 90s. The book was published in the 90s.
Okay.
So, and this event happened in 1990.
Okay.
This was 1990. So they decided to go on a walk over to the island. And they're walking along the trestle. They walk around the island, and then they decide to walk back. And before they're off the island, it's like a railroad trestle, so you're walking on the railroad, but then...
Active railroad?
Active railroad, but not running at that time. Mm-hmm. So they're walking back across, like starting to cross the bridge, and John sees something, or Eli, not John. Eli sees something, and he says he doesn't remember what it is, but something caught his eye, so he left Catherine up on the railroad tracks and went down and was like poking around in the bushes. And then all of a sudden, Catherine lets out like a shriek. And he's like, what's wrong? And he goes up to her because she's just like frozen in terror. And she said, I heard a whistle. And at first I thought it was the train, but there's no train anywhere. Like they can't hear it. You can hear a train coming usually. Like, they rumble the tracks. You can feel the vibration. The train would whistle. She said, I heard it again. It was a whistle right in my ear. Like someone was standing behind me and I felt the wind of the whistle in my ear. And Eli's like, oh, bummer, I didn't hear anything. Because Eli just cannot seem to experience anything paranormal, even though that's like his greatest wish. Kind of like me. Well, that's not true. I do experience paranormal.
Yeah, you do.
But, and the thing about the girl, like the story of the girl, the shop girl that was found on the island.
Uh-huh.
The other rumor was that she was buried in a cemetery and that her sister went to visit her grave and then was killed while visiting her sister's grave. They just found her body stabbed in the cemetery. But I couldn't find any record of it, so I think it's just urban legend. But that was the story. But isn't that insane?
You're hearing all of this from the book that you read? Is that what you're talking about?
All of this is from the book I read. Okay. And then I read like an interview that the author of the book did with like a podcaster or something. It was like a printed interview, but I read that as well. So she said, I didn't see anything. I just heard the whistle and felt the whistle in my ear. And Catherine this put her in a state of panic. And they left back to, I don't remember where they were in Wisconsin, but they left from Wausau back home. And when they get home, there's a voicemail from John. Oh, Sun Prairie is where they were. There's a voicemail from John. And John was like, I need to talk to you guys like right now. Call me as soon as you get this. Something happened and I need you to call me. So they get a hold of John, and they pieced this timeline together. And there were 2 voicemails, I believe, from John. The first one was not you need to call me right now. But the first one was, hi, I just had an urge to call you guys. Just how are things going? Like, is everything good? And then they got another one like hours later that was like, you need to call me right now. I've got to talk to you as soon as you get this. Call me. So what happened was around the same time that Catherine was on the railroad trestle and heard the whistle, John was working on art. He's an artist by nature. That's like was his job. He was working on art for some job, but he said he couldn't concentrate and he got this crazy urge to call them. And so that's when he called them. And then he ended up going to bed and falling asleep. And he said he had a really uneasy feeling as he went to bed, just like this, something was wrong. Something was not right. And then suddenly he wakes up and he's hearing a knock on his door. And then he hears, he had no idea, by the way, that Catherine and Eli were out of town. They didn't live together. Like in the movie, they lived together, but in real life, they didn't. He had no idea they were out of town. They were just friends. And so he hears knocking on her door, and he hears Catherine's voice saying, John, let's go get breakfast. And that wasn't abnormal because that happened every few weeks. Like Catherine and Eli would stop by, and this is like pre-cell phone days. This is 1990. And they would knock on his door and be like, hey, wake up, come get breakfast with us. So it wasn't abnormal. So he's like, coming out of grogginess and like, he's like, okay, I'm coming, like getting his shoes and stuff. And then he looks outside and it's pitch black. And he's like, okay, this is weird because they have never stopped by in the middle of the night or like in the wee small hours of the morning. You don't call that breakfast. What's that?
You don't call that breakfast.
Well, no, you call midnight snack.
Yeah.
And so he suddenly like was overcome with fear. And then the door knocks again, and it's Catherine's voice again, going, John, come on, let's go get breakfast. And he said that he laid down on the ground, and he could see under the crack of his front door, and he could see that someone was there. Then he started hearing John's voice as well, or Eli's voice as well, saying, John, open the door, let's go get breakfast. And he just laid there and watched, and he didn't even sleep. He watched until eventually the shadow left, but he couldn't sleep the rest of the night. He just sat there laying on the floor, watching the crack under the door to see if anything came back.
Oh my gosh.
And so he lived like in a boarding house. And the next day, and this is the thing is like, if this didn't happen, there's a picture in the book of the boarding house, which we can put on the socials.
Okay.
That shows his room. He was like on the 3rd floor attic room of this boarding house, and the house was locked at night, so you couldn't get in unless someone let you in. So he checked with like the lady that ran the boarding house and just said, "Did you let anyone in the middle of the night?" And she was like, "No, I didn't get any calls or any rings. I didn't let anyone in, and it was definitely locked."
What?
Yes.
But how could it get in that far and then just not into his room in the boarding room? Like,
I don't know.
it's just like
a
some
great
doors are
question.
impassable. Like, what?
It's like a vampire
Vampire, you have
rules.
to be let in to.
But how would it get into the boarding house then?
Well, maybe because the boarding house is like a
Public
space owned by many entities, it doesn't need permission, or maybe a different boarder let it in. Like, who knows? It just depends on what you think the bye-bye man is.
Snuck in behind somebody.
Or if the bye-bye man is a human, like it claimed to be, like a living human, and it was just like creating Catherine's voice. And that's the creepy part, is that it created Catherine and John's voice. He said it sounded just like them.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So that's kind of the end. They didn't really play with the Ouija board anymore. They didn't really have any other experiences. Well, that's not true. Catherine had some very creepy experiences still after that, but Eli, much to his chagrin, had nothing. But they're all still involved in the paranormal, except for Catherine does her best to stay away from it. But there were, so they did some research. Robert Schneck, the guy that did the book, he did the research. He called up the Algiers Historical Society and asked about an orphanage. And they said there had not been one in Algiers, but there was one a couple miles north in a town called Gretna. So then he called the Gretna Historical Society, and they said, no, we can't find any records of an orphanage here.
What?
But so he couldn't identify the orphanage other than Algiers Historical Society said that there was one in Gretna. Then he started to look up serial killers active at that time. And active at that time was the Butcher of Kingsbury and also the Cleveland Torso Killer, where 16 men and women were murdered by this guy whose name I can't remember. He was arrested in 1980, and he killed for a long time, where he would decapitate his victims. But 8 of the heads were found, and even though they were decomposed, there was no evidence of like trauma that showed that like eyes or tongues had been removed. And there was a guy, so the chief investigator on the Torso Killer case thought that this same guy, whose name I should have written down but didn't, was responsible for other murders where they found a tin skull of like a mechanical robot where he had been attempting to attach human ears to the robot, like Frankenstein style.
What?
Yeah. And I mean, you
Gross.
keep in mind that if the bye-bye man is real and he's killing transients that are traveling by rail,
Yeah.
they're not going to be reported or missed.
Yeah.
And depending on how he disposes of the bodies, maybe bodies weren't found.
Yeah, well, which is why so many serial killers target those populations.
Yeah. So, yeah, no more Ouija board. They all stopped playing with it. But that is the story of the bye-bye man and the crazy, scary thing that happened when they decided to use a Ouija board to contact a serial killer
Weird.
who would use it to find. And that's the creepy thing to me, is that the ghost said, or the entities said, he's in Chicago, but he's coming closer to you. If it was just a spiritual entity, it should be able to come fast. But if it's a physical entity, it needs to, take the trains and come slower.
Got to have his little pet of eyeballs and tongues,
Yeah. So,
which I can't imagine that thing moves very quick.
no. Well, do you have any thoughts about it? Other than,
I mean, that just sounds so crazy.
Like the
I know.
tongues and eyes is such a gross monster blob. Like it's so yucky that you can't even really entertain the idea that it's real.
Yeah.
listen, I'm going to draw a picture and it's going to be actually kind of cute. It's going to look like a caterpillar.
No,
But it's
I
going to
feel
have
like
a tongue like a dog, wet, like wagging out, like it's a happy dog. And then this body is mostly going to be eyes.
I feel like instead of making this
We'll move along on
into
tongues.
a horror movie, it should have been like a horror adult cartoon series.
It does kind of feel cartoonish, doesn't it? Almost like a manga, or what do you call those comic books?
Yeah. It
Yeah.
does seem like something that the Japanese would really excel at drawing.
So that's so many things.
It just sounds so crazy.
So I asked each of you to tell me, to find some stories or tell me your own stories of Ouija board. So who wants to go first?
Oh, I can share one. Let me just open it up here real quick.
And don't say or think the Bye Bye Man's name. Now anyone who's listened to this is...
Oh, you're screwed.
unfortunately.
Sorry.
Haley, do you have one already ready? It's taken me a second.
Oh, I have, Nettie and I, we have done Ouija boards 2-3 times.
Yeah, a few times.
Not very many, but a
Not
few.
time.
And so when we have done it, it seems like we keep on talking to the same entity that goes by Zach, Z-A-Q, or as we like to call him, Zakwa.
Well, wasn't it Zaquan? Or was it
I thought it was just Z-A-Q.
Maybe it was just ZAQ.
And also whenever we are doing the Ouija board, we get so sleepy.
Yes, we are sapped of energy.
Completely drained.
And as Emily said in an earlier episode, and you think that's paranormal that you get tired at nighttime? Remember?
It's really, really weird.
You did. It was funny.
It was funny. And it's weird that we're doing Ouija boards kind of late at night and we get so tired. And so also like with the ZAQ thing, it is like where the letters are positioned is that like left, right, which is the sign that you're talking to Zozo.
I don't like that.
So after we did it, I think the first time, and I think that might have been the night that my pillow was pushed when we were staying at Edgefield.
That's when we created our own Ouija board because you had your beautiful one and then you forgot to bring it. So
beautiful one that I bought just for that trip, and I left it at home.
Pouring water into my cup.
Oh, you're fine.
Sorry about that.
And
but we made a great one.
We did.
And we used a little bottle cap as a planchette, and it actually worked.
And so I don't remember if you had any paranormal experiences once you got home, but I did. I had like kind of weird dreams. And then there was one night where I woke up in the middle of the night. I had to go to the bathroom. And then I was coming back to bed, and it was so dark. Like darker than it normally is.
And your room kind of naturally is a little bit lit, and it was not.
A little bit, and it was not. And then I'm walking towards our bed, and I see an outline that looks like my husband's outline. Mm-hmm. And it's like startles me. And then I see my husband is laying in bed. Mm-hmm. And so then suddenly I think someone is in our room. But then the outline of my husband is gone.
Right.
And so then I go back to bed, and then we do the Ouija board again. Mm-hmm. And we ask the Ouija board, hey, Zach, was that you in my room? Mm-hmm. And it said yes.
Yes. And do you remember we asked if it was related to us, and it said yes.
Yes.
And we also felt like perhaps it was actually like a protective, like ancestral guide.
Something like that.
And then I asked our mother if we were related to anyone like with a name similar. And she was like, Alexander Sims. And I was like, no, not Zan.
Zach.
Z-A-Q.
But yeah. And so like, that's just kind of, I mean, that's, it wasn't very spooky, our Ouija board experiences, but.
No. But I also felt like there was something, like I remember you saying that you felt something came home with you. I just noticed an increase in seeing those little shadows in the corners of my eye where I'm like, who's there? Oh, no, nothing. Who's there? Nothing. You know, those little like shadow, like little darting shadows you'll see in the corners of your eye. I noticed an increase in that for a while until we played it the second time. And then I think we were very careful about how we closed out the session that time.
I think the first time we may not have even said goodbye.
We were so tired.
We were so tired.
We like got overcome with like time to go to sleep now.
Like we were giddy.
Like that.
Yes. We were like giddy, and then, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we got tired. I've got another one, but Emily, do you have one?
Well, listen, I mean, I've never really done a Ouija board, but I will share some Reddit experiences that I found if you want, or you can just tell yours again because it's.
No, you do one.
Oh, no, you do one.
You do one, then Haley will do one.
Okay, I have two short ones. I'll just do, okay, so the query was, what's your scariest encounter with the Ouija board? And the first person says, I was at a small party when they brought out the board and prepared the room. Some of us walked outside to the backyard and hung out due to not wanting to be a part of it. About 40 minutes later, all of them came out crying and shaking in fear. One of them I still keep in touch. I've asked her what happened, and she never wants to talk about it. Her husband asked me what happened because she has night terrors from whatever happened that night.
Wow.
Whoa.
And that's it. And then the next one, my son and I were walking down the toy aisle of an old department store. I heard something fall off the shelf behind me. It was a Ouija board box. To this day, I wonder who was trying to contact me. And she didn't buy the board? What?
Oh, she should have bought it.
Should have bought it.
Or maybe it's a good thing she didn't. We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so this is a story that I did my best to recall. It was from a friend from hair school. She told me this, her personal experience with a Ouija board. And hair school was 15 years ago.
Okay.
So, I'm remembering as best I can. So she lived in a house with some friends. They were renting, and they had a party, and someone brought out a Ouija board, and they begin playing. The Ouija board starts to get personal. Everyone freaks out. They put the Ouija board in the basement of the house. Within the week, they had multiple fires.
Whoa.
And by the end of the month, the house totally burnt down.
Oh my gosh.
And the only thing that was left in the rubble was an imprint of the Ouija board in the basement.
You've got to be kidding me.
I'm not kidding you.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah.
That's really creepy.
And that, boys and girls, is why we don't play with Ouija boards.
And that's why you do protection before a Ouija board session.
And close it out.
And
set your
always
intention.
say goodbye. Well, are we wanting to do more stories?
I would love to, maybe one more from each of you. I think that would be a good way to round it out. If you each have one more. Do you each have one more?
I sure do.
Uh-huh.
Yay! I love hearing these.
Here it is. Okay. I've got one. Emily, have you got one pulled up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the query on our ghosts on Reddit was, people who have used a Ouija board, what's the scariest response you've gotten? And this person, throw it_Amita, said, this one was scary to me. My mom and aunt used a board after their dad died. He had remarried, but had told his daughters that he was leaving them a few things in his will, including some money. His second wife was the executor and was saying he hadn't left them money, etc., etc. Sorry, I can't remember exactly what she apparently said. Anyway, Mom and her sister thought it was possible the money wasn't left to them after all, like second wife said. But my aunt was really strapped for cash, and they felt like it was also possible the second wife was withholding info and money.
Rude.
They apparently managed to get their dad via the Ouija board and asked him whether he had left them money in his will. It spelt out a 3-letter acronym for a bank and then a series of numbers. Turns out he did have a bank account with money in it intended for his daughters. The account matched the bank acronym and the account number. This one spoke to me because the details were a surprise to my mom and aunt. I don't know how they could have gotten that info out of thin air.
Wow.
Whoa. He was adamant to get that money where it belonged.
Yeah, but the follow-up is no, they didn't ever get the inheritance because just because you have the numbers in the bank, you can't just get into the account,
It's so important to write your will. Don't trust that someone else that you're leaving as the executor is going to do what you want. I mean, I've seen case after case where
money
people
makes
were
people
told,
weird.
Yeah, that's
people
true.
were told, of course I'll be fair. Of course I'll give the money to your children. And
You think I would do something like that? You think I wouldn't take care of your children? And then I know who you're talking about. That bitch took all the money.
Do you have one? Another one? Or wait, who had just said the last one?
I did.
You did. Yeah, do you have one?
Yeah, I've got one. When my mom was a little kid, her dad was killed in a road traffic collision, and my nan went through a phase of trying to contact her dead husband with Ouija boards with the help of an old aunt who is into all sorts of creepy shit. And whatever came out of that board has haunted my family for decades. It seems to have attached itself to my mom's older sister. They were 4 and 6 at the time of their dad's death, and all throughout their childhood, they were plagued by it. My mom doesn't really like talking about some of the things she remembers, but it would scratch them, throw stuff at them, pull their hair, lock them in rooms, and set fire to things. Even my mom's younger sister, who was not born at the time of doing the Ouija board from my nan's second marriage, had quite terrifying experiences, as well as various extended family that can recount stories to this day. Whatever it is has followed my mom's older sister to where she lives in a whole different country. Her husband and kids regularly experiencing similar things to what my mom did as a child. Cousins have experienced it, and when she's back here visiting, I personally refuse now to stay overnight in her home.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
For the last decade, I've stayed in a nearby hotel. They say, do not touch him. My aunt didn't even do the board herself, but her life and everything has been plagued by this thing. Many blessings. Nothing has ever worked to get rid of it.
Wow.
And that's from Amy's Cool on Reddit.
Oh my gosh.
On the paranormal Reddit.
Well, there's your warning stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say proceed with caution. It's okay to not.
It's okay to not. And just usually what you put into it is what you get out of it.
Yeah, I would say correct. Well, girls, thank you so much for going down this spooky rabbit hole with me with the Ouija board.
Yeah.
I appreciate all of the work you both put into it, and I appreciate you listening to my story of the Bye-Bye Man.
Oh my gosh, this was such a fun topic.
That
As
was
you
a really
both
fun
know, I
topic.
love Ouija boards, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. And who is closing us out? Not me. I don't know why I started.
I opened. Emily's
Oh,
closing.
yeah, I'll close out. Yeah, thank you for listening. And again, we are the Spooky Darlings. Please, if you have any stories to share, send them to us.
Oh, yeah. Do you have a Ouija board experience?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
We would love
tell
to
us.
hear
You can
it.
send it on our, you can DM us on our socials at the Spooky Darlings podcast on Instagram or TikTok, or you can email us at thespookydarlings@gmail.com. We love to hear from listeners. And please, if you have time, tell your friends and leave us a 5-star review and a rating. We love so much to read reviews from listeners. And thanks again for listening. Goodbye.
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 5 stars.
5 non-human